Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee. Live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Tuesday, September 25th, 2018. Kevin Laramee, that's myself. Duane Rollins is online as well. Good morning, Duane.
Good morning.
I'm excited today. We're going to talk about the USL announcement. There's going to be a USL announcement at 1 p.m. later today. We'll give you all the details thanks to Nippon Chopra, with his sources, was able to uncover what that announcement is today. So we'll talk about this. We'll talk about the Atlanta front office, the restructure. You know, being first in the league, first in the Supporters Shield race, it is not enough. They're looking forward, and I think a lot, if not every single team in MLS, should be looking at Atlanta right now. But let's start the show with the big headline, the best FIFA awards. I kind of miss what the awards used to be. And by the way, for listeners that don't know, before there used to be the Ballon d'Or, which was the trophy giving to the best player in the world. But that contract, that agreement between France Football, who is the creator of the Ballon d'Or, and FIFA finished in 2016. So this is why now, for the second year in a row, the FIFA Best Award, and best of all the players who plays in the entire world, Luka Modric, with 29.05% of the votes, got the best player of men, the best man player of the world.
Yeah, and we were saying this off air that really what I think is happening here is that Luka Modric, I'm fine with Luka Modric winning. It's a little bit of variety too, which is nice, and I think Ronaldo is probably the player of the year, but nonetheless, I understand that they're looking at a very important month, and Modric being the key player on a team that went all the way but one final win to pulling something completely remarkable off a country of Croatia's size winning the World Cup is something we've never seen. Getting into a World Cup final is something we've never seen until this past summer. And Modric was obviously a key component to that, and was obviously, I think, both of ours choices at the end of that World Cup as who we thought was probably the justified player of the tournament. So if you win the player of the tournament of the World Cup, hey, who's to argue?
It could have been Mbappe, would have been another choice where we're like, okay, yeah, we see it for the World Cup. I don't know if his sample size at the club level mixed with the World Cup was enough to win it. So I do understand why Luka Modric won. Cristiano Ronaldo finished second with 19.8% of the vote. Third, Mohamed Salah of Liverpool with 11.23%. And then we can go a lot further. Mbappe fourth with 10.52%. Lionel Messi fifth in the world for Leo, 9.81%. And then it becomes just small margin. You got the Grizz, Antoine Griezmann sixth, Eden Hazard seventh, Kevin De Bruyne eighth, Varane 9, and Harry Kane number 10. When was the last time that an English player for Tottenham of all teams was in the top 10 of the best in the world?
Top 10 English players that sure might have been up there maybe a few times, would have been in the top 10. You look at a guy like Ryan Giggs, and that might have inched into a top 10. But yeah, it's not in terms of his profile worldwide. I think that this is certainly there's been UK players. You think Gareth Bale and so on and so forth. But in terms of Englishmen, this is certainly a player that has the potential of maybe becoming the best Englishman ever when the career is over. A lot of time to go on that one, and he needs to get it going on the club side now. But I think with Messi finishing fifth is fascinating. Anyone who thinks that Messi is the fifth best player, that there are four better players better than him in the world,
what are they smoking? That's what I'm thinking.
It's like we talk about the Lou Marsh Award on Five Rings. Sometimes Lou Marsh Award, for those that don't know, is the Canadian Athlete of the Year in all sports, and it's a very general kind of cloudy, no determined sort of meaning of what that means other than best athlete. And really that if you give it to the actual best athlete each year, it's probably going to be a hockey player ad nauseum, right? So they mix it up, and it actually rarely goes to hockey players. And I think the Messi vote's kind of in that same vein, is that it kind of, and same with Ronaldo not winning. It's like you're so excited that there's some other options this year that you're going to go over the top to vote for those other options. But it's fine. It's just the Ballon d'Or times new one or whatever. They still have that too. The magazine just gives out separate. We have so many awards now. It's hard to keep track of what matters and what doesn't. So it's just easy to think that they all matter a very tiny little bit.
Yeah, and we talked about it yesterday on the show where France Football has decided to create a Ballon d'Or for the féminin side, for the women's side. So we'll keep an eye on that one over the next few weeks. Before we move on to the other awards last night, just selection panel is interesting. Those are the names of the people who chooses the top 10, and then the vote occurs around the world. So you have a lot of famous names in this selection panel this year. Fabio Capello, Didier Drogba, Kaká, Frank Lampard, Lothar Matthäus, Alessandro Nesta, Ronaldo, the fat one, Andy Roxburgh, the Winton Ruler, Carlos Alberto Pereira. You do have a lot of names that resonate across this side of the Atlantic, and of course on the other side as well, with name like MLS alumni Duane, Didier Drogba, Frank Lampard, Kaká, Alessandro Nesta. Yeah, Frank Lampard probably wants to forget that he played for NYCFC.
Nesta, there you go.
Nesta, yeah, original 2012 Montreal Impact player. That was something. I remember Nesta playing. That was feels like ages ago. Nesta, DeVayo, yeah.
I was 10 feet from Nesta while he watched his very final game of his professional career play out from a rainy, miserable BMO field.
That's
in
true.
2013. He was injured in the crowd, sitting in the stands by himself. And my friend Sonia, who is a big Italian football fan, Sonia Mizio, for those that would know her on Twitter, she was with me, and she looked over and she goes, "Is that Nesta?" And walked up and started talking to him. It was it turned out to be his final game as professional because he retired after Montreal's season.
Yeah, that was fun times. All right, now let's move to the best FIFA goalkeeper of the year. Surprise, surprise, Thibaut Courtois of Chelsea and Belgium. I guess his blunders were not enough to deter the vote. We don't have a percentage for this one, but Thibaut Courtois first, Hugo Lloris second, and Kasper Schmeichel third. Kasper Schmeichel had an amazing World Cup and did have a great year as well. Not as successful as others he had, but for Leicester. But Thibaut Courtois, maybe the upset there over Hugo Lloris of France. I do feel that Hugo Lloris' recent actions off the pitch had a ramification on this vote.
No, for sure. And Schmeichel's fascinating too. He's almost old school in the terms of the way he's a goalkeeper right there. A lot of
like Peter, like his father. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, I think in a different era, a bigger club would have reached out and grabbed him by now. But it's kind of fascinating to me that someone hasn't made a play.
You want to see what's something funny, Duane? Look at the selection panel. Peter Schmeichel is there. So René Higuita, the scorpion kick goalkeeper, we all remember him. Ronald Dazaev of Russia, of course, and Gordon Banks. That's a name of a throwback too. So a lot of who did you think Peter Schmeichel voted for? Come on, he voted for his son. He has to.
Yeah. Maybe it's a product of my oldness or nothing, but 90s goalkeeping was just more fun, wasn't it? The goalkeepers were just more fun back in the 90s. Well, that's my perception here.
They didn't have to play the ball. They didn't have to play from the back. They just had to stop it. That was a big difference.
So they could be a little more eccentric. And when they came out, they were interesting to watch because they're trying to kick it, and they're kicking it like some guy in the crowd. Yeah, I got it. Same, all goaltenders across like in any sport that has a goalie. I think that in the last 20 years or so, the character has no longer gets to be the goalie anymore because now they want them to actually be athletes, and it's kind of ruined some things. But it's probably made the game better.
I miss Ron Extall, Patrick Roy. Those are hockey names, but René Higuita, Peter Schmeichel, those are a good example in the soccer world where. You could can you imagine if a goalkeeper nowadays would do a scorpion kick to clear a ball? There would be outcry. He would not even finish the game. He would be subbed off. The coach would be, why in the world would you take such a risk? Back then, we're still seeing it in the top 10's best save of the world or the top 10 most insane soccer moments. So yeah, I guess you're onto something.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There were so many fascinating creatures back there. What was the Mexican keeper that was like 5'2"? I think he was a little taller than that, but it was a lot of fun back in the days.
No, well, one of the last ones too, Ochoa. Ochoa seems like a fun guy, and he seems like that's before he cut his hair. Now he's just another goalkeeper who doesn't have an afro. So I guess that changed too. Best FIFA men's coach. Didier Deschamps of France with 30.52% of the vote in front of Zinedine Zidane of Real Madrid, formerly of Real Madrid, and maybe the next coach of Inter Miami FC. We'll see. I don't think it's going to happen, but apparently David Beckham called Zidane on the opportunity in Miami. 25.74% for Zidane, and third, Zlatko Dalic, coach of Croatia, 11.81%. Then going in the top 10, you have number 4, Pep Guardiola, 5th, Jurgen Klopp, Simeone, Roberto Martinez with Belgium. I never thought I'll see Roberto Martinez in the top 10 of coaching. Ernesto Valverde with Barcelona. Why would the Russian coach be there? I guess Russians
they had 4 good games in the World Cup.
Yeah, we all know why. Gareth Southgate, and I mentioned Gareth Southgate for one reason and one reason only. One of the presenters during the FIFA Best Award was Idris Elba, maybe the next James Bond. He was in the movie The Dark Tower, a famous actor from England, and he was wearing a vest, yes, a sweater vest, just like Gareth Southgate was wearing during the World Cup, but it had pictures on it of Gareth Southgate wearing a South vest. That's so meta, and it was maybe the funniest moment of the entire award.
When James Bond's upstage, people were going on and on about that. Look, these awards are ultimately of exercise in distraction for a little while before they we forget about them again for another year, and then just get into other debates about whether or not someone should be on there or not. But but the off the court stuff being more interesting, except for I do think there's a more general point to be made in one of the categories that we'll talk about in a minute, being the women's player that
Speaking of the best FIFA women's player, and this one we're going to give you the percentages too, because, well, this created a lot of outcry yesterday on social media. Just go to the FIFA Best Awards on the hashtag on Twitter. Marta of the Orlando Pride, which did not make the playoff, by the way, and Brazil national team, 14.73%. Jennifer Marozan of Lyon and Germany, 12.86%. Ada Egeberg from Lyon as well. Lyon won the Champions League for the 3rd year in a row, by the way. Of Norway, 12.60%. Then you got Megan Rapinoe, 4th. Pamille Harder, 5th. Lucy Braun, 6th. Amandine Henry in French, 7th. Wendy Renard, 8th. Samantha Kerr, 9th. Maybe the most deserving player in this list, finished 9th. And Saki Kumagai of Japan, number 10. The top 3 here, it's so close for the voting. For Marazan, she had 12.86% of the vote. Then Egerberg in 3rd had 12.60%. What did Marta do in 2017-18 to win the best FIFA women's player? Because outside of being called Marta and being maybe a top 3 superstar and top 3 world famous name in the women's game, I don't see any accomplishment, and her play itself, I don't think is worthy of that trophy this year. Not at all.
Only 4 goals scored in league play. 4 goals and 4 assists for her NWSL season. I believe she was involved in 17 games and started 14 of them. I'd have to double check that stats around, but it's around there. Meanwhile, you mentioned Sam Kerr, who was the discerning choice in the entire thing. Anyone who sort of follows the game and knows the game at a level beyond the surface was pretty consistent in voting for Sam Kerr. If you go through, you can find everyone's vote there. Every captain, there's one media person per country, every captain of every national team and manager of every national team gets a vote, which is, it seems in theory to be the right way to do it, but what it leads to in the women's side is just, and this isn't new news here, a complete misunderstanding and lack of interpretation of what actually is happening. So instead of getting people that are worthwhile for their play this year, you get name recognition. This would be like, if you were to list every country in the world were to get a vote for the best hockey player in the world, to use our bingo cards for a second, and Wayne Gretzky were to win, and he was female.
He's retired for 30 years.
Yeah, it's silly. Marta's at least still playing, but she hasn't been the best player in the world
for 4 years at least. Yeah, 3-4 years easily.
start of this decade would have maybe been the last time that you could legitimately claim that that was the right call.
And that's unfortunate, and it's unfortunate for players like Samantha Kerr, or to another extent, Pamil Harder plays for Wolfsburg. Wolfsburg had a great season too, maybe the best team in the Wolfsburg tree there. They're better than the men in their results, and she plays for Denmark, and because she plays for Denmark, the name recognition is not there. A lot of good French players too. Amandine Henry had a great few months playing for France and Lyon, and next year's a World Cup year. So maybe next year we'll have a more legitimate FIFA Women's Player of the Year award that may be more representative of the actual winner. But I thought it was worth talking about this because, well, Marta does not deserve it. And it's not just an award. There's prizes that accompanies with that. There's money, there's sponsors, there's TV time, and you get that famous picture with Luka Modric. Don't you think Samantha Kerr, example, would have benefited from being paraded or being shown next to Luka Modric around the world in that picture? Yeah, it's a spot. Marta's taken a spot that's deserve to be to somebody else, and those moments will maybe give the chance to become a breakthrough star to someone else, to maybe get a few more sponsorship. Look, let's be fair and honest here. Sky Blue FC especially, they're not making a lot of money, and they're not treated properly, changing in sub-bar dressing room, and we all have seen what happened this year. If you go down and read the Equalizers article from a few weeks ago, we all know the condition of Sky Blue, and I think this would have put at least a bit more name recognition to Samantha Kerr, would have given her more sponsorship opportunities, more opportunities to make money and become more well-known. And it's a shame that it just goes to Marta.
Yeah, it really what it illustrates most of all is how little attention is paid to the women's club game. Because if you pay any attention to the women's club game, it's laughable that you voted for Marta. It really is. It'd be like I used Wayne Gretzky as an example before. I mean, let's go to MLS and pick a random player with 4 goals and say, I'm going to vote for him for Player of the Year in MLS. Like in that context, it'd be silly, right? Like it's silly. There's so many players. Sam Kerr, for instance, quickly for those that don't know, she played for Sky Blue, which is probably the least visible of the NWSL teams. They play in New Jersey. They get no one out. It's not a good situation there right now. 20 games played this year for them. She had 16 goals and averaged more than 2 key passes per game, generating about 3 shots per game in terms of her overall stats. Those are immense offensive stats. And she also plays for Australia, as you mentioned. She's Australian. Led that program up to be number 4 in the world right now, and are amongst the sort of smart money choices to make a deep run in France next year. Although I don't want to vote against the hosts or the Americans quite yet, but if you want to pick a third team in there, Australia is not a bad shout. So yeah, this is a player that maybe you could make the argument that there should have been. There's other players there. You mentioned a couple other names that were pretty decent, and obviously the U.S. is always going to have some players that deserve to be part of the conversation because they suffer, I think, from having too many good players. But at the very least, when you're looking at a player like Sam Kerr, she absolutely should be top 3, 100%. There is no justification beyond ignorance to not include her in that top 3, and there's no justification for ignorance in the women's game right now. If you are a football fan.
Yeah, well, if you are a football voter and if you're part of FIFA, this is where it makes no sense. If you're a fan, you can watch whatever you want. If you're paid and if you're asked to give your honest opinion about something, get informed, will you?
At least make a surface look at the stat. Okay, you've got the Champions League, you've got Google the NWSL. Look at the stat page. Google it. Yeah. If you just want to vote for the top goal scorer in the NWSL, it would better than just picking Marta.
Yeah. And even in the FIFA, the best FIFA women's coach, you see this name recognition happen too. Okay, Reynald Pedros, manager of Lyon, won. Of course, he won the Champions League 3 years in a row for Lyon, 23.15%. The thing is, the second and third, Serena Wiegman, coach of the Netherlands, in a non-World Cup year, why is there a country there? There should be clubs. You should have more recognition about the clubs. Same for the third one, Asako Takakura from Japan. Should be a club. And you got 4th Emma Hayes of Chelsea, which they won the Premier League, Women's Premier League. And, she should be second. And Wolfsburg should be third. Stefan Lerch, if you want to use my German. So there is the same amount of, I would say, is it complacency? Yeah, like, oh, it's just a women's award. We can just, which name do I know and I'm going to vote for them? Or which name am I a part of? Or which name did I heard before? And yeah, that's a shame. Even in the women's coach, you can say that there's the same type of mentality that led to Marta winning it. Maybe not leading to Pedros winning the FIFA women's coach, but Wingman of the Netherlands with 15.31% in second? Really? Asako Takakura in Japan third with 12.80%? Really?
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing with the women things. Maybe with the Bouilleur coming on board, maybe they'll have like experts pay more attention. I don't, off the top of my head now, they moved away from the voting system. I'm not exactly sure how they decide that award now, if it's just back to the editorial staff there. I think on one hand, look, we all want to have like, a demographic process when it comes to votes like this. But I think what it illustrates is that there should be some level of weighting. Like if you're, all the captains, all the coaches get a vote. So let's weight them. If you're a top 10 nation in the world in women's football, maybe your vote should be weighted more heavily than someone who's in the bottom 100, right? Because one's paying attention to the women's game, one's involved in the women's game, one is not. Fine, give them a vote, make them 1/4 or 1/5 or whatever of the weight of Christine Sinclair's vote, because that's someone who cares and pays attention about the women's game versus someone who goes, oh yeah, I got to vote for the women again, right? Which is an ongoing thing.
Quickly, let's finish the awards before we move on to something else. Leonard Thye won the FIFA Fair Play Award, and I guess he deserves it because he missed an Eredivisie match to donate stem cells to a leukemia patient. So yeah, that's a good Fair Play Award. Puskas, I think I'm going to go on a rant again. The FIFA Puskas Award given to Mohamed Salah for his goal against Everton on December the 10th, 2017. First of all, if it's not Benjamin Pavard's great volley from the semifinal against Argentina, which should have been that one, quarterfinals, it should have been that goal. There's no other more beautiful, important goal this entire season. If not that one, you give it to Cristiano Ronaldo for his Champions League great bicycle kick, or maybe Gareth Bale's great bicycle kick. No, just give it to a okay goal by Mohamed Salah. I guess they wanted Salah to win something. Duane, you there?
I apologize for the mute button. That's on the bingo card every week when Duane's talking with the mute button down behind Inside Baseball Podcasting 101. Yeah, it should have been Bale. There is no doubt about this whatsoever, Kevin. But I believe that I'll give them a little bit more leeway on the Pukas because that is fan voted. So really what's happening is we've got an illustration that there's a lot of Egypt and Liverpool fans in the world. But anyone who doesn't think Bale did the goal of the year last year is, I don't know what to say. Clearly the goal of the year.
Oh yeah, or Pavard. If you don't give it to Ronaldo or to Bale for those two bicycle kicks, you give it to Pavard for that amazing.
And it doesn't always have to be a bicycle kick. I mean, that's not my argument. But
a volley is more difficult to do than a bicycle kick, especially when it's a ball coming from up.
But there is this tendency to only give the goal of the year in any vote to a bicycle kick or a goal from half, which I never understand where the goal from halves work. Yeah, there's a bit of vision there, but there's a lot of luck when you score from half.
And a lot of onus of that is on the goalkeeper.
It's just you visualizing the goalkeeper's too far out and hitting a perfect volley over him. But yeah, or a chip over him is what I meant to say.
Yeah.
No, I sometimes like the free kicks get a short shift in this, but goal of the year is ultimately. That's one award that I don't mind talking about, and it is kind of fun because it is just fun, and it's recognized as that. When you get into Player of the Year, I think it's a little more serious because, as you say, there's commercial opportunities tied into that you're missing out on if you're not getting a fair vote to go back to the women's thing again.
And Demi-Volée Pavard needed to win this, but maybe I'm a bit biased here. All right, Peru fans won for the FIFA Fan Award for their presence and their singing through the tough World Cup they had. They represented their country really well, traveled well. There was no controversy with Peru fans in Russia. It was an amazing time, so good for you, Peru. And we'll finish the awards with, quickly, the FIFA Fifth Pro World 11. Can you imagine managing this team? This would be amazing. Outside David De Gea, which only has one more saves in the World Cup than I do, or that Duane does, so there's that. So David De Gea in net. Dani Alves, Rafael Varane, Sergio Ramos, and Marcelo. That's a heck of a back line. Like, can you imagine those fullbacks going forward? Like, I'm scared of Marcelo.
Well, yeah, that's the only issue I would have with that back line, is they might not be as defensively focused as you want, but no one's got the ball anyway, so it doesn't matter.
The midfielders, geez, look at those midfielders. Luka Modric, N'Golo Kante, and Eden Hazard. Yeah, that's a midfield.
Yeah, no, for sure. When you have, if assumedly you're going to make this into a real team, so what, De Bruyne's on the bench,
Well, well, you got Kante and Hazard and Modric anyways. And Mbappe, Lionel Messi, and Cristiano Ronaldo as your forwards. This is the FIFA Fifth Pro World 11, and those were the 2018 FIFA Best Award. Quickly, before we wrap the show for today, Duane, two other subjects. On the agenda, the USL will announce a rebranding of its name and its leagues starting at 1 p.m. today, the Announcement Eastern Time, and this will start on the next season in 2019. The USL D1, or what's known as just the USL, is becoming the USL Championship. The USL D3 is now going to be called the USL League 1, and the USL PDL will become USL League 2. Where did they get the idea for that?
Hashtag marketing. No, never heard of those terms at all, tied into those levels at all.
So I guess MLS is the Premier League.
I guess it is. I don't know whether they're going to take the other step today and announce that there might be movement between League One. I don't think there'll be movement between League One and League Two, but there might be movement between League One and the Championship. They're going to keep the USL branding on there as well, so we aren't completely losing USL as a terminology that we can use to describe the overall umbrella, but they're going to divide it up as such. The natural evolution would be if they're going to create two tiers that are integrated a little bit between what I would call 2 and 3, but is, I guess, 1 and 2 now or something, whatever.
Just like in England, the Championship is the second division. So I guess the Championship will be the second division, and League One is the third division. So there might be movement between League One and USL, the Championship. The thing is, we have already seen Orlando move to D3 or League One, and there's going to be others.
TFC2 will be there next year as well.
TFC2, and a lot of the two branded teams that are left from Major League Soccer will probably go down to USL League 1. That might be part of the announcement today. But, I guess England is never too far away for inspiration.
Well, no, for sure. At least we don't have a Carabao Cup yet over here, so that's something to talk about there. Which also starts today. Restarts today.
Yeah, if the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup was a little more popular, it could be called the Capital One Cup really easily, because Capital One is a big credit card company in the United States. So I wouldn't be surprised. And guess what? That's what it used to be called in England. So that might happen too.
Or like the Quicken Loans Cup. I think that's probably as likely, but StubHub Cup.
The FanDuel Cup? No. Don't go to FanDuel. It's not safe.
I don't get FanDuel. I don't understand it.
I don't get DraftKings either. All those things, like, what's the fun? You really want to test your...
Fantasy's never been my thing. That's why we don't have a fantasy segment on this show. I don't think Kevin and I are really fantasy people. So if you want a fantasy show,
there's
feel free to make it for us.
Yeah, there's other out there anyways that you can watch. But MLS Fantasy destroyed itself with the new rules starting last year. And I guess they want to make it so easy for people to do it week in and week out that it doesn't have any ramification throughout the entire season. So what's the point? You really want to test your mettle? Test it over a season, not over a day. But I guess that's why I don't like FanDuel and DraftKings too.
Yes, exactly. And if I'm going to join I pick them at the start, click, 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 and then I see what happens at the end.
Yeah, don't have to change things every single day and week, and you're going to play, who's going to be my captain? Who has time for that?
Yeah. And for the record, we finished, because we used the collective kick picks to do it, 350th out of more than 50,000 entries in the MLS World Cup brackets. We almost won something. Anyway, so there you go. So we do know what we're talking about.
Well, what will we have won from MLS? Like recognition? Okay, we know who you are now. They do. They just don't really do it often. All right, to finish the show, talking about Major League Soccer, Duane, Atlanta United does not sit on his laurel, and that's impressive to me. The fact that even though they're first in the Supporters Shield race, they're first in the Eastern Conference, they have announced that they are restructuring their front office, hiring a new director of player administration to oversee contracts, so basically a capologist that knows what he's doing, a new video analyst for the scouting department, and 3 more full-time international scouts. That's 3 more. They have 3 already, so now they have 6 full-time international scouts. Duane, that's 6 more than a lot of team has in Major League Soccer. Like, no joke.
6 more than the league had when TFC entered the league. So yeah,
6 more than Montreal. 6 more than LA.
Yeah, it's really, scouting has been short shrift for a long time, because MLS teams largely over the years have relied upon the network of agents, which has led to several teams having curious amounts of players that all come from the same agent. Some people, if you want to be cynical about that, will suggest that there's something untold happening, but the less cynical but more horrifying reason that happens is laziness half the time, right? Why scout when I could just call John up? John, who you got?
Oh,
I got this Belgian kid.
Yeah, I got this guy. You don't know him, and he's probably worth $500,000. And if you pay him $500,000, it'll be a bargain. Meanwhile, he cashed in a $50,000 commission, and that's probably why you overhyped this player, because this commission goes up if you pay him more money.
Yeah, and for years. I mean, look, for a while, MLS teams were run pretty cheaply. So scouting was something that went by the wayside, because they had the NCAA where they could go to a combine and they could draft some players and they could cycle it up now. But as the league tries to grow and evaluate, they absolutely are going to need to be out there finding, we talk a lot about how there's a lot of talent in the world to fill leagues up. There certainly is. But it isn't like a never-ending source, right? You still have to go out and find them. And a lot of the places that we've talked about for years that have there's value, quote unquote, and not so much anymore. Like South America, there's as much bombs that put in South America to MLS. There are success stories down there.
There might be more bombs. If you look at it over the course of the last 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's more flops than flip, I guess.
Yeah, like you look at any international sign, like Akeche for TFC this year. Looked good on paper, even looked good for the eyeball test, never fit in, never was able to go, and he's gone halfway through the season. That's just one example off the top of my head right now.
Adrian Arregui from Montreal, who was touted, a good one. There's Lopez a few years ago. There's Lucas Ontivero. So I can name like 5 off the top of my head just with one club from South America, just from Montreal, that all involved in flops. So, yeah, I guess Africa is going to be the new place where we might find... Or maybe Canada, or maybe the USA will be the new hotbeds of undiscovered talent.
I bet you there will be some movement from the Canadian Premier League MLS in the very near future. Yeah, absolutely. It's the next year. I listened to an interview, non-soccer related here, on the Fan 590 here in Toronto, with a fella who used to be an ESPN reporter that has now been hired by the LA Clippers and he has this weird title, but essentially what his title is he's doing research on the players that the Clippers are thinking of bringing in. And not just research about like, can they pass the ball well, or can they, shoot a 3-pointer? He's talking about research about like, what is his family influences like? Does he have any history of any type of abuse in his life? Does he have like this? He's doing essentially private eye work on that. And I think
he's looking through his Twitter feed. Anything from 10 years ago that could be surfacing back up and give us trouble at some point.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying everything has to be like, negative in that way, but you also just find out whether like, when you're talking about soccer, to go back to MLS, if you have someone hired like on your staff to do similar, they could go down there, they could find out pretty quickly if some guy from Peru that is immensely talented has never left his town before and is very close to his parents or something, and he's going to struggle, you find this out through just getting to know him and doing some research, he's going to struggle with that separation. And maybe that's the difference between you paying him $250,000 and going, you know what, maybe you're better off to find a club in Chile.
Or maybe you're off like, okay, we'll pay you $100,000, but we'll bring your parents aboard, and your parents will have some sort of a responsibility with our club, but basically just be there to make sure you're well surrounded.
Yeah, and that's all part of the scouting process, is to find out what the personality and what kind of needs these players have and how you can help them along the way. And for the long time, I think MLS teams were happy with just listening to the advice of an agent, which has his or her own motivation, and throwing the stuff against the wall and seeing what stuck. And because there was no really repercussions, and there still aren't to the same level of other sports. You make a mistake on a GM level in MLS, you could hide for years before someone's going to take action on you. It's getting a little bit different now, but there are still managers out there that in any other league would have been canned years ago that get away with it. And that's got to change. And Atlanta's an example, as we said, to get back full circle on this, of a specific example of how they're changing that and how clubs like Atlanta will continue to be successful moving forward because they're investing the resources needed to sustain their model.
And look, the price they're going to pay for the 3 new scouts, the video analysts, and the new player contracts negotiator or player contracts administrator, this will be all paid for as soon as they sell Almiron and Martinez, and it will be paid for maybe 10 to 100 folds. And with that money, they'll turn around and hire other young talent that they would have discovered were their new scouts that will take the places of Barco is going to have the free reign, and they're going to have a new crop of young talent that will, in 3-4 years, be as valuable as Almiron and Martinez, and they will sell them for a lot of money, and they will make another profit. So it's an investment. It's not an expense, and it's fun to see one team seeing it the way the usual world of football sees it.
No, 100%. And look, MLS frustrates me on a lot of levels in terms of we didn't even talk about the rumor of them knocking off the third DP slot, which came out last week, because it seems like they take 1 step forward and 3 steps back half the time, right? And this is an example of a team taking a step forward. But my worry when I see ambition being expressed like this is that maybe down the line the MLS owners might start to implement some kind of spending cap as opposed to a salary cap, just to hold everyone back, because God forbid anyone get ahead. So I will always applaud ambition. And I will applaud the Atlanta United's ambition, AU's ambition here.
Yep, you're absolutely right. And it's hard to hate Atlanta United just because they're doing things the right way, at least the way we have been talking about for years. And now we see it happen. So I guess it's encouraging, and it gives us maybe hope for other franchises in this league. Scouts, please. Hire scouts. I'll scout for you.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll scout for you too. Hell, I have scouted for them in the past. I think. I
think we are. Like, I think they're listening to our show. Like, oh yeah, okay, let's do this. Because a lot of time we'll talk about something, and like 6 months down the road, it actually happens.
I might have overhyped Mobabuli, but I still hope that he can make a comeback in the Canadian Premier League.
It's never over. Where is he now? Egypt?
Syria.
Syria? I wasn't too far off. Mobabuli, York Nine's first superstar in the Canadian Premier League. Make it happen.
There you go.
Speaking of the Canadian Premier League, let's go full circle and finish this. We're recording the next edition of the Two Solid Two Soccer Podcast later today. You'll be able to find this on patreon.com/sports podcast network. It'll be a busy week for the Two Solid Two Soccer Podcast, with the Canadian Premier League tryouts having begun in across the country. They were in Halifax, and they were going to be in Laval on Thursday. I'll be in Laval on Thursday. I got credentials to be at the trials, so I'll give you a first-hand account of what I see, the level, the type of session. It's Alex Bunbury, a friend of the show. We had him on the show a few times. Alex Bunbury is the one managing and directing the sessions. All the coaches of the Canadian Premier League, the 7 coaches, are present, from Tommy Wilden to Stephen Hart to Jimmy Brennan to Jeff Paulus and so on, are there to take a look at the level, take a look at the players, and it's always 2 days. You got the first day, and then some of the players are invited to come back the next day. I'll be there Thursday for sure. We'll see about the show Soccer Today if we're able to do it or not, but you'll sure have my report on a later Two Solitude Soccer podcast. So make sure you subscribe. $2 a month will give you access to the Two Solitude Soccer podcast at patreon.com/sports podcasting network.
Yeah, absolutely. And today's show is going to actually feature some insight into those tryouts. So it's going to be, I think, a fun one. So it's just $2 a month. Then you can get that, listen to us talk very specifically, very detailed about the Canadian Premier League and Canadian soccer in general.
Canadian soccer and Canadian soccer only on the Two Solitude Soccer podcast for patrons only. Until tomorrow, you can always follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee, and until next time, as always, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.